The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as Officer Rachel stepped into the interrogation room, her heart heavy with the weight of the day's events. The room was stark and uninviting, with gray walls that seemed to close in on the small table at its center. A single metal chair faced her, occupied by a young black woman named Aisha. Rachel had seen many suspects in her career, but something about Aisha struck her immediately. Aisha sat hunched over, her hands trembling slightly as they rested on the table. Her wide eyes darted around the room, taking in every detail, every shadow that flickered in the harsh light. Rachel could sense the palpable fear radiating from her, a fear that was all too familiar in the context of their surroundings. It was a fear that often accompanied black suspects in police stations, a fear rooted in a history of mistrust and systemic bias. Rachel took a moment to observe Aisha more closely. The young woman couldn't have been more than 20, her face still soft with youth, yet marred by the anxiety of the situation. Aisha's clothes were simple but clean, and Rachel noticed the way she fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, as if trying to find comfort in the fabric. It was clear that Aisha was terrified, and Rachel felt a pang of empathy for her. As Rachel settled into her own chair, she recalled her training. She had been taught the importance of building rapport, of creating an environment where suspects felt safe enough to share their stories. But in that moment, she felt the weight of her badge and the authority it represented. Would Aisha see her as an ally or an adversary? Would she be able to break through the walls of fear that surrounded the young woman? Rachel took a deep breath, reminding herself that her role was not just to extract information but to understand the person sitting across from her. She knew that the interrogation process could be intimidating, especially for someone like Aisha, who was already on edge. The last thing she wanted was to add to that fear. "Hi, Aisha," Rachel said softly, her voice steady but gentle. "I'm Officer Rachel. I'm here to talk with you about what happened today." She watched as Aisha flinched slightly at the sound of her voice, her eyes widening even more. Rachel felt a surge of determination to change the course of this interaction. She wanted Aisha to know that she was not just another officer in a long line of interrogators. She was a person who genuinely wanted to listen. "Can you tell me how you're feeling right now?" Rachel continued, leaning forward slightly to show her engagement. She hoped that by opening the door to a more personal conversation, Aisha might feel more at ease. The young woman's gaze dropped to the table, and Rachel could see the internal struggle playing out in her mind. Would she trust this officer enough to share her truth? Aisha's silence hung in the air, thick and heavy, as she stared at the table, her fingers still nervously twisting the fabric of her shirt. Rachel could see the conflict in her eyes, an internal battle between the instinct to protect herself and the desire to be heard. The room felt stifling, and Rachel knew that the longer Aisha remained silent, the more the walls around her would solidify. "Take your time," Rachel encouraged, her voice remaining calm and inviting. "I know this is a lot to process. I'm here to listen, not to judge." She hoped that her words would resonate with Aisha, that they would serve as a lifeline in a moment that felt overwhelmingly isolating. After what felt like an eternity, Aisha finally lifted her gaze, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I was scared." Rachel leaned in slightly, her heart aching for the young woman. "Scared of what, Aisha? Can you tell me what happened?" She wanted to create a safe space for Aisha to express herself, to share her fears without the weight of judgment. Aisha took a shaky breath, her voice trembling as she began to speak. "I was in the store, and I saw something I wanted. I thought maybe I could just take it, you know? I didn't have enough money, and I thought no one would notice." Her words tumbled out in a rush, as if the act of speaking was both a relief and a burden. Rachel nodded, encouraging her to continue. "And then what happened?" "I don't know," Aisha said, her voice breaking. "I just panicked. I thought I could get away with it, but then I saw the security guard watching me. I was so scared. I didn't want to get in trouble, but I didn't know what else to do." Tears began to spill down Aisha's cheeks, and Rachel felt a surge of compassion for the young woman. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Aisha," Rachel said softly, her heart aching for the fear that had driven Aisha to make such a choice. "It's important to understand that we all make mistakes, and it's okay to feel scared. You're not alone in this." Aisha looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and vulnerability. "You're not mad at me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rachel shook her head. "No, I'm not mad. I want to understand what led you here. It's important for me to hear your side of the story." She could see the tension in Aisha's shoulders begin to ease, the wall she had built around herself starting to crumble. As the conversation continued, Rachel noticed Aisha's posture slowly shifting. The young woman began to sit up a little straighter, her hands relaxing on the table. Rachel felt a sense of hope. Perhaps they could navigate this difficult moment together, transforming fear into understanding. "Can you tell me more about what was going through your mind when you were in the store?" Rachel asked gently, wanting to delve deeper into Aisha's experience. She could sense that Aisha was beginning to trust her, and she wanted to honor that trust by allowing the young woman to share her truth. Aisha took a deep breath, her voice steadier now. "I just felt like I had no other choice. I've been struggling to make ends meet, and it felt like the only way out. But I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted to survive." Rachel listened intently, her heart heavy with the weight of Aisha's words. She realized that this was more than just an interrogation. It was a moment of connection, a chance to understand the complexities of Aisha's life and the pressures that had led her to this point. As Aisha continued to speak, Rachel felt a shift in the atmosphere of the room. The initial tension that had filled the space was slowly being replaced by a sense of understanding. Aisha's story unfolded like a delicate thread, revealing the struggles she faced daily: bills piling up, a lack of support, and the overwhelming pressure to provide for herself. "I've been working 2 jobs just to pay rent," Aisha explained, her voice gaining strength. "But it's still not enough. I thought maybe if I took something small, it wouldn't matter. I didn't think it would lead to this." Rachel nodded, her heart aching for the young woman. "It sounds like you've been under a lot of pressure, Aisha. It's understandable to feel desperate in tough situations. But there are other ways to seek help, and I want to help you find those options." Aisha looked up, her eyes searching Rachel's face for sincerity. "You really think so? That there's a way out of this?" Rachel leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Absolutely. There are resources available, community programs, support groups, even job training. You don't have to go through this alone." She could see the flicker of hope in Aisha's eyes, a small spark that had been buried under layers of fear and shame. "I just don't want to be judged," Aisha admitted, her voice trembling again. "I feel like everyone sees me as a criminal now. Like I'm just a stereotype." Rachel felt a pang of sadness at Aisha's words. "I understand why you feel that way, but I want you to know that you are not just a label. You are a person with a story, and your worth is not defined by this moment. We all make mistakes, and it's how we learn and grow from them that truly matters." Aisha's shoulders relaxed a little more, and Rachel could see the tension in her face begin to ease. "I've never had anyone talk to me like this before," Aisha said, her voice softening. "Most people just see the color of my skin and assume the worst." Rachel felt a surge of determination. "That's not right, and it's something we need to change. I want to be different. I want to listen and understand, not just judge. You deserve that." As the conversation continued, Rachel found herself sharing a bit of her own background, her own struggles, and the lessons she had learned along the way. She spoke about the importance of compassion and understanding, and how every person has their own battles to fight. Aisha listened intently, her eyes widening as she absorbed Rachel's words. "You really get it," she said, a hint of disbelief in her voice. "I thought all cops were just out to get people like me." Rachel shook her head. "I can't speak for everyone, but I believe in justice and fairness. I want to help, not hurt. And I want to make sure you have the chance to move forward from this." The atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a tense interrogation was transforming into a genuine conversation. Aisha was beginning to see Rachel not as an authority figure, but as a person who cared about her well-being. "Can we talk about what happens next?" Aisha asked, her voice steadier now. "I don't want this to define me." Rachel smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. "Of course. Let's discuss your options and how we can work together to find a solution that helps you move forward." As the conversation progressed, Rachel and Aisha began to outline a plan. Rachel shared information about local community resources, including job training programs and counseling services. She emphasized that seeking help was a sign of strength, not weakness, and that Aisha had the power to change her circumstances. "I can help you connect with someone who can guide you through this process," Rachel said, her tone encouraging. "You don't have to face this alone. There are people who want to support you." Aisha nodded, her expression shifting from fear to determination. "I want to try. I want to do better for myself." Rachel felt a swell of pride for Aisha's resolve. "That's the spirit." It's a journey, and it won't always be easy, but taking that first step is what matters. As they continued to talk, Rachel noticed Aisha's demeanor change. The young woman was no longer the frightened suspect who had entered the room. She was becoming an empowered individual ready to take control of her life. Rachel felt honored to be part of that transformation, even in a small way. "Thank you for listening to me," Aisha said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I didn't expect this. I thought I'd just be treated like a criminal." Rachel smiled warmly. "You deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, Aisha. Remember, this moment doesn't define you. It's just a chapter in your story." As the interrogation came to a close, Rachel felt a sense of fulfillment. She had not only gathered information but had also fostered a connection that transcended the typical boundaries of an interrogation. Aisha was no longer just a suspect. She was a person with hopes, dreams, and the potential for a brighter future. "Let's make sure this is the beginning of something new for you," Rachel said, standing up and extending her hand to Aisha. "I believe in you." Aisha took Rachel's hand, her grip firm and resolute. "Thank you, Officer Rachel. I won't let you down." As Rachel left the room, she felt a sense of hope blossoming within her. The encounter with Aisha had reminded her of the profound impact that empathy and understanding could have in her role as a police officer. It was a stark contrast to the often adversarial nature of interrogations, and she felt invigorated by the possibility of change, not just for Aisha, but for herself and the community she served. In the days that followed, Rachel found herself reflecting on her interaction with Aisha. She had always believed in the importance of justice, but now she understood that justice was not just about enforcing the law, it was also about compassion and support. She began to seek out training on implicit bias and community engagement, eager to learn more about how to approach her work with a mindset that prioritized understanding over judgment. Rachel also reached out to local organizations that provided resources for individuals like Aisha. She wanted to ensure that she could connect future suspects with the help they needed, rather than simply treating them as criminals. It was a small step, but she believed that every effort counted. One afternoon, as Rachel was reviewing her case files, she received a call from a community outreach program. They informed her that Aisha had enrolled in a job training program and was making significant progress. The news filled Rachel with joy. She felt a sense of pride knowing that her conversation had sparked a change in Aisha's life. As she hung up the phone, Rachel couldn't help but smile. She realized that her role as a police officer extended beyond the badge she wore. It was about being a part of the community, advocating for those who felt voiceless, and working to dismantle the barriers that perpetuated fear and misunderstanding. In the months that followed, Rachel continued to build relationships within the community, attending meetings and engaging with residents. She listened to their concerns, shared her own experiences, and worked collaboratively to address issues of trust and safety. The more she connected with people, the more she understood the complexities of their lives and the systemic challenges they faced. One day, while attending a community event, Rachel spotted Aisha across the room. The young woman was laughing with a group of friends, her demeanor bright and confident. Rachel felt a rush of pride as she approached her. "Aisha!" Rachel called out, her heart swelling with happiness. Aisha turned, her face lighting up as she recognized the officer who had taken the time to listen. "Officer Rachel! It's so good to see you!" Aisha exclaimed, her voice filled with warmth. "I just got a job. I'm working at a local cafe, and I love it." "That's amazing!" Rachel replied, her smile wide. "I'm so proud of you. You've come so far." Aisha beamed, her eyes shining with determination. "I couldn't have done it without your support. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Rachel felt a lump in her throat. "You did all the hard work, Aisha. You took the steps to change your life. I'm just glad I could be there to help." As they chatted, Rachel realized that this was the true essence of her job. It wasn't just about enforcing the law, it was about building bridges, fostering understanding, and empowering individuals to rise above their circumstances. In that moment, surrounded by laughter and community, Rachel felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that the journey toward justice and equality was ongoing, but she was committed to being a part of that change. With every interaction, every conversation, and every act of kindness, she could help reshape the narrative around policing and create a more just and compassionate world. And as she watched Aisha thrive, Rachel understood that the fear that had once filled the interrogation room had transformed into hope, a hope that would continue to inspire both of them as they moved forward on their respective journeys.